things are almost exactly the same, but they're just slightly different. And for some reason, I'm blessed with, or it's just part of my design or plan to get those, retrieve those memories and connect the dots that we're living in like multiple lives. Like quantum mechanics is real, like the many worlds theory. It's all happening simultaneously, and there's multiple versions of us. And it's not just me in this life being abducted into this program and brought back. In fact, there are many versions of me involved in many different types of programs. And that's like, and I
Mhm.
think that timelines come to an end and collapse. And when they do, that those memories bleed through into this reality because that energy has to rehome and go somewhere.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Starseed Speak. I'm Rebecca Rose, Sirius Blue, and with me today, I'm so happy. Tyler Kiwala is here of Journey to Truth. Most people know you already. Thanks for coming. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be talking to you again. It's been a minute, so
It's been a
uh,
little while.
yeah,
Yeah, so
I'm grateful you reached out. We're going to be at the Odyssey conference in Sedona in January together,
yeah,
so we can
yeah.
talk about that. But I'm just grateful to be here, and thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, most people know you and you've got it all over, the journey to truth is how I came to know you. And in for those who maybe there might be Tyler, a couple people out there who haven't heard of you. If that's the case, Tyler is yes, an independent researcher with a passion for disclosure. I know you've been on such a steep curve with so much going on for you these past few years. Um, and you've had a lot of anomalous experiences, lots of ET encounters, lots of personal movement on your path with we could even say supernatural, paranormal, the galactic, and all sorts of things that you have consistently turned toward and examined very fully and really serve as a great model for all of us. So I'm happy to be here with you. And I know you just recently as well, published your book this year. So um, you have so much happening, so much
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, it's been quite the year. Well, it's been quite the few years, really.
Yeah.
We had I had so much on my plate at one point that I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
We hosted our last Rebels of Disclosure conference, but while I was planning that one, we were actually planning the following conference in Hawaii because it's a much bigger trip to plan for. So I was planning for these two big events. At the same time, we're working on this documentary for the Secret Space program that has been, 3 years in the making now, and it's
Yes.
almost released. But while that was in the background, slowly pecking away at that, I was writing this book. So
Yes.
I was in the process of selling my house in St. Louis and moving states. I had so much going on. I didn't even know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had to prioritize and I got the book out. I was like, listen, I can't, I was actually losing my mind. So I had to tell myself, you need to pick one project and just finish it. I had all these things in the works. So I sat down and put my life on pause in the winter of last winter,
Yeah.
and I finished this book. And I
Yeah.
made it a goal to have it out by our conference in May, and I got it out in April. And that cleared space for me to pursue some other stuff, include, running the podcast the entire time and interviewing all these people. And
Yeah.
it was quite the workload. So the book basically chronicles my awakening experience. After my mother's passing. It's not like my whole life story, right? Because my awakening started after my mother passed away in 2011. And then it gets heavily into two recruitment attempts into black budget programs, for lack of a better term. Not necessarily a secret space program, unless it could have led to that, for all I know. Well, technically, one of them was a Mars recruitment. So,
Yeah.
um, either way, I go heavily into those stories, and then I share some other memories from what I call parallel lives or parallel timelines, and I kind of break it down how all this stuff happens. In my opinion, it's like a whole fresh take on the secret space program and these parallel lives that are existing simultaneously, right? So
Yeah.
it was an ambitious project, but that book was my baby. It is my baby, and there will be another one when it's time. But I've been really busy. Finally settled here in Sedona, and the documentary on the secret space program is my primary focus right now. And it's big. It's just shy of 2 hours. You do have a little cameo towards the end. It is a something we wanted to do as far as um, we I didn't want to just like put a bunch of Zoom calls on there. It was like we were traveling to these people and locations and filming on site.
Yeah.
So it made the most sense to include the people that we can affordably travel to and stuff like that. Although we would have loved to included everybody, but we made a conscious decision to include everybody towards the end that's ever been on our podcast in some capacity talking about the programs. And then obviously you're in that compilation. So it's going to be a really cool thing. And I can't wait for everyone to see it.
And that's premiering, is it 9th January in Sedona? Is that correct?
Yes, the
Yeah.
January 9th, and then the following weekend, the 16th, at the Odyssey conference that you're going to be speaking at.
I'll get to see it in person with you at the conference.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I actually I would love to sit down and do an in-person interview with you if you're up for it
Yeah,
while
we'll
you're
do that.
talking.
So
Yeah.
for people who don't know, Odyssey in Sedona, it's the 16th, 17th, and 18th of January. So we're just coming up in a few weeks. Tyler and I will be there. Randy Kramer, Tony Rodriguez, and Lily Nova. Some other folks will be there, and I think it's going to be a beautiful venue and
Hmm.
lots going on there. So come join us live if you can in person in Sedona. Tell me, so we're talking about your book, and I'm curious. You said, I think, that did you wrote this in the period of time of just one winter? This whole thing
No,
with all this
I s-
detail?
I actually wrote the intro to this book like in 2018, and
Okay.
I was getting nudges from the universe, from everybody to write a book, and I was like, I don't have a book to write. Why would I write a book? And everyone kept seeing it in my future, so I sat down and started writing, and I realized it didn't feel right. It wasn't time.
Yeah.
But I saved it, and I went back all those years later and I revisited the intro, and I actually was really liked what I wrote because it captured the energy of everyone's beginning of their awakening experience, and it captured that energy. So it immediately the reader can relate to that, and then it pulls them in after. So I'm kind of glad that I did that. But it was always me like journaling dreams and memories over the years, and I had stuff written everywhere, and some of the chapters were just me basically typing out what I had already written in a journal.
Yeah, yeah. It's helpful to hear that because I know that a book has been calling me for a while, and I do love to write and express myself poetically and share intimately. And I'm daunted because you kind of have to jump out of life for a while to actually tend that kind of baby and that
Hmm.
production, which takes some time. So
Yeah.
congratulations on
Thank
getting
you.
that done. And this is just a piece of what I read in your introduction that I loved, and I want to share this here as you're introducing people to your book. And all that comes next, you say, I want you to take this as an opportunity to drop into your heart and notice how this information makes you feel. It is through the heart where true discoveries are made. How does your body respond when you hear information that challenges what you know to be true? Yeah, I want you to use this book as an experiment to pay close attention and observe the subtleties in your reactions upon reading each chapter. So it was such a beautiful way to invite people to maybe expand their just to be open to receive and
Yeah.
also to feel in a time when we're so being, up in the head and not necessarily sensing with our full self.
Hmm.
I know that's just a small snippet in the introduction. It was a tiny thing. You cover so much detail and so many experiences in the book. So let's get into a little bit of the that awakening path for you. So as you said, things started to ramp up after your mother's passing 2011. Like what was going on in your world? If we go back to that, 14 years ago, so to say, what was your like then? Life, what was it like then?
Right. So really quick, just to piggyback off what you said about the intro, it was very important to me, and it still is, even doing the podcast and everything that we do, to not tell people what is true or what's not true. And
Yeah,
that's why I led that way, because like I don't want, it's so easy to speak confidently something that you believe in and it come across as true. And somebody on the other end of that, that's maybe naive in their or young in their early in their journey, they might not know how to discern whether or not you're telling the truth or not. So I didn't want to tell anybody like this is true, just feel into it because some of this stuff I'm still trying to make sense of.
Yes.
But back in so when my mother passed away, I was just basically a slave on autopilot in the Matrix. I mean, for lack of a better term, that's where I was. I definitely was always interested, and I had actually, I would say, Ancient Aliens was kind of starting to
Yeah.
open my mind back then because that came out in like 2010 or somewhere around then when I started watching it, and that was opening my mind, but it was just that. It was just I was super fascinated, but you watch the show, then you go back to your life, but it was doing something to me.
Yeah.
And my mother passed away, and basically, like someone flipped a switch, and unfortunately, they started off as negative experiences. I started getting attacked in my sleep paralysis,
Mhm.
levitation, even alien abduction, I would find out later, stuff like that. And some of the most severe, worst cases that
Mm.
I've ever heard of, and I wasn't talking about it because I was scared of what everyone
Yeah.
would think.
Yeah.
I had roommates that I lived with at the time that I know for a fact they would have thought I was just nuts if I tried to tell them I was levitated out of my bed last night and some demon was sitting on my chest and I was paralyzed and whatever, So I had to, I suffered in silence and my fear, I was so scared of it. I was 25 years old and I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid to go to bed. I started sleeping with the light on, but I didn't know back then, I had no awareness or knowledge of anything in this field, right? So I didn't realize that my fear was actually creating more of it. The more I was
Okay.
scared of it,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so yes, I love how you just shared all of that because so many people in my audience will totally relate to it. And how bewildering it must have been for you to go through that, not necessarily having any backstory or context. Suddenly, this is all going on for you. And my question was to be, what was the link between her passage? Was it through the portal of grief that all these negative sort of energetic experiences, physical, somatic, and psychic experiences were happening for you? Is that the
Yeah.
case?
So looking back on it, yes. So whenever we lose somebody or whenever there's a catalyst like that that weakens our field and where we're in that state of grievance, that is actually we're in a lower frequency,
Yes.
right? That's
Yeah.
just that's science, you know. And
Mhm.
whenever that happens, basically we become a target for these entities in the lower astral that are looking to feed off of our loose harvest, right? But what I didn't realize, so it was a whole, what I call a snowball of synchronicities. It just kept building and building that led me to learn about Reiki energy healing. And I went and synchronistically found this healer and set up a session with her. And she started telling me I had this entity attachment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's that? Like, what, like a possession? I was so
Yeah.
new to all
Yeah.
this stuff. But I believed her because something in me knew.
Yeah.
And I didn't even miss a beat. And I booked a session with her. But what she described is she said when somebody dies like that and we're weak and we're grieving, there's like a fracture in our aura, right?
Yeah.
Oh, just dropped a crystal. And there's like a fracture in our aura, and it it's basically like a crack in an egg, and through that crack, light is beaming out into the astral realm, and it's acting like a beacon for
Speaking,
these
it's a call and
entities.
response with the astral coming. I'm here.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Do you feel like your mother herself had extraordinary experiences, anything like yours? Do you have any knowledge of that?
No, as far as I know, my mom didn't have experiences like that, but I found out there's a lot of interesting activity on my dad's side of the
There
family.
is. There
Yeah,
is.
I have my dad's dad was in the army, and he trained at two different bases. One base, Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, which a few whistleblowers claim to have memories of being at for special forces training. And in fact, they do that there, and it's a real weird base. But I had started getting these recall back from a base, and I was just telling my friend about it, and he's like, "It sounds like you're explaining Fort Leonard Wood." And I found out after I got these memories back that my grandfather actually trained there, and he also trained at Jefferson Barracks, which is a military base that I essentially grew up on. Never
Yes.
even connect, yeah, never even
Yeah.
connected those dots until one of my friends was visiting me in St. Louis, and I was like, "Yeah, this is where I grew up," and blah blah. She goes, "On base," and I was like, it literally never occurred to me until that moment as an adult that I grew up down, on base.
You were right there, Tyler. Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
grandfather, he was stationed there on and off through his time in the military. So, and then my uncles in the Marines, and there's a lot of military background, and then even stuff that has happened just to me directly as a child that all adds to
Mhm.
the military secret space program, black and whatever side
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. So were you, we'll come back around to your dad here in a minute, because I'm fascinated by these experiences that run in families. But were you groomed in some way as a child on the base, do you feel, for all these things that would happen later? Recruitment attempts and so on. Yeah.
So we didn't technically move to that base until I was in fifth grade.
Mhm.
But we lived not far in the area. But we moved to, they call it Jefferson Barracks, and there's Jefferson Townhomes that there were old barracks that were turned into townhomes, but they're all there. I don't have any memory of being involved at all as far as that goes. But I also don't have a lot of memories from living in that particular place as well.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, my stepdad, who came into the picture right around that time, whenever we moved there,
Mm.
he was a mechanic and he worked for General Motors, and somehow he had a contract with the military, and he was working on the brand new military Hummers. And what his job was to take a brand new off the factory line military Hummer and drive it for 500 miles, put 500 miles on it and see how it does. And if there's any issues, he would fix it, right?
Yeah.
And so we would always have these military Hummers parked there, and he had a government ID card. That's how you even started it. It was like a card. It wasn't a key or anything. And one day he let me like take one to school and stuff. So there was just that interesting connection. But um, looking back on it now, I easily could have been more involved than I remember.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
some of that stuff's just foggy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well then, so how did let's do the directions here. So I going through
Right.
the quantum field. How did the memories of these things start to occur? Were there things that were just happening? A lot of the recall is from more recent times in life, not from childhood. Am I right in understanding that?
Yeah. It happened. It's all out of order. Like it, you know how that
Yeah.
is.
Yes, I totally know
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But so it was just as I started learning about things like the secret space program and stuff, I had to revisit different points in my life and reevaluate, okay, what actually happened here. And then things, even basic childhood memories would come back. Like in fifth grade, I had the Air Force came into our classroom. And I'll never forget, this is a core memory of mine because I was enamored by these guys. And
Yeah.
they came into our classroom in fifth grade and they asked us, they wanted the entire class to design their own spacecraft and draw it. And so we had every kid drew, like they wanted us to design a spacecraft. And they told us that sometimes children have the best ideas. And I literally drew a triangle, like a triangle shaped craft. And I
Yes.
remember looking around and seeing the kids, basically, they were just, everyone was drawing a rocket, right? Because that was like the programming. And I remember feeling like I had the wrong answer or something. And I almost changed mine. I almost like crumbled that up and then like drew a rocket because I was kind of embarrassed for some reason. But it was
Yeah.
too late. And then they started collecting the papers. And looking back on that now, I'm like, they were trying to see who remembered something, right? Or like I don't know how to actually put into words, but I think they were kind of gauging where the kids were at and seeing who was recalling things or who was tapping into something outside of programming, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. And that's a strong memory, grade 5. So when was it that you finally, we're jumping back to your dad and your kind of the family situation. At some point you had, I think, a bit of a heart share with your father, and then he was able to be forthcoming about his experiences.
Yeah.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah. So that was after my mother passed, and I was having months, years. I don't honestly the time frame of how long it was happening to when I told him was kind of foggy, but I was suffering in silence for some time, and I didn't know what else to do. It was getting worse. Like I was missing work. I was actually miserable. I was becoming unhealthy. I was living off of energy drinks because I couldn't function. It was so unhealthy. And
Yeah.
I finally opened up to him because I just didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And he was 100% receptive. He believed me. Like it went from like being real scary to like being so grateful. Like I was like, oh my God, he believes me. He doesn't think I'm crazy. But then
Yeah.
that's when he told me, you know what? When I was a kid, he had this recurring dream, but he doesn't think it was a dream of him being abducted by aliens, a Greys, and he was taken up under this craft, and he said they would feed him this goop and put this goop in his mouth, and like it was real foggy, but it would happen often. And what I find interesting about that specific details, the movie Fire in the Sky with Travis Walton, at the end of that movie, when he's taken up onto the craft, they put a goop into his mouth before they shoved that thing down his throat. They put this big blob of goop just right in his mouth. And I'm like, that's not a coincidence. Like there's a correlation there. So his experiences weren't necessarily space program related whatsoever. It was just more ET abduction as a kid type of experiences, but nothing beyond that that I know
Mhm.
of.
That in itself is so massive. My father had experiences with the Greys and was
Right.
solving some of his work problems via his connection to the Greys for the deep state. Anyway, so I remember your dad being at the conference, the 22
Yeah.
conference that
Yeah.
we were all there, and I was like, oh, that's so cool that your father's here. Like,
Right.
wow. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I love that became part of the story, and that discourse really lightened your load quite a bit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mentioned, oh, go ahead.
Well,
Something?
I was going to finish answering your question from earlier.
Yeah,
You said, when did these memories start coming back? Well, I told you about the fifth grade thing, but that was one thing that I had to revisit once I started listening to all these testimonies. But in 2017, before my big awakening in 2018, I
yeah.
had this whole Mars recruitment thing that I wrote off as just crazy guy was trying to thought he was going to Mars and he was trying to get me to go with him, and it was just like I wrote it off. But looking back on it, I absolutely know that that was a real attempt to bring me into some kind of program. And that's a whole chapter in my book. And the amount of information and the weirdness surrounding that story and who this guy was. Like, we were friends, we worked together. He gets escorted off the job by black government vehicles, goes missing. I randomly run into him at that military base at the park where I grew up because went there to walk my dog that day. Nobody had heard from him for months, and he's in the parking lot. I pull up, and he's like, "You showed up," and I'm like, "What do you mean I showed up?" He goes, "You don't think you're here by accident, do you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" That was the beginning of a very long recruitment effort to bring me into this Mars program that he claims that he was being brought into. And he was told like on Labor Day of 2017 there was going to be some catastrophic event and the world was going to end, or and they needed to bring a certain amount of humans to Mars to preserve humanity, like this whole narrative, right? I'm like, this dude is absolutely nuts. And but he knew all kinds of other information too that I was just so over my head at the time. I put it in the book, and
Yeah.
we can get into that if you want, but it's a lot. And
Yes.
I wrote that whole experience off as nothing. Even after he literally the last day I saw him, he told me he was leaving. He said, "All right, I'm leaving. This is your last chance to come with me." And I said, "Larry, I'm not going to Mars, brother. Whatever. You're not either, but whatever." And he went missing he went missing, and no one heard from him again for 7 years, and he pops back
Mhm.
up. And very interesting. Um, that he went missing at all, which kind of adds some credence to what he was saying.
Yeah, it
But
does.
mhm.
Sure.
But
Yeah, it
second,
does.
right. But secondly, it wasn't until I learned about the secret space program and Laura Eisenhower's testimony specifically about a Mars recruitment, where I was like, wait, I'm like, this happens to people? Like there's a real like what's this? And then so I listened to her story and then I'm like, oh my God. I went back and thought about that whole summer of my life whenever that was happening and all the stuff
Yeah.
he told me. And I'm like, oh my God, like that was a real attempt. Like that this wasn't some crazy thing.
Yeah.
And the more I sat with it, the more it made sense. And that was the start of realizing like I don't they were
Yeah.
trying to bring me in on some level.
And this was just so I make sure I've got your the time and the date. This was 2017, 18. Was that is that right?
2017, the summer of 2017.
Okay. Wow. And then yeah, I could see how, finding Laura's testimony on that would make your head kind of spin and go, okay, wait, I need to look at this again.
Right.
And I think what I hear you saying too is you had to when you're around like how did you connect the dots? You had to go back and reassess a lot of things that you remembered and just kind of wrote off. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it wasn't even until 2021 that I started realizing that the 2017 thing actually was like I should
Oh
look
my
take that
goodness. So
more seriously.
yeah, so that's quite a couple,
It
that's a few
I
years.
well, I almost blocked the whole thing out
Yeah.
until I'm like, I was talking to my friend one day and I started telling the story out loud. And as I was listening to myself tell her the story, I was like, oh my God, like, like, wait a second, what actually happened,
Yeah.
And then I thought about everything that happened and it was just absolutely wild,
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's sobering. I mean, have you ever had nights like I've had just this month? I've had some things come back that really, in such a shocking way, that I've had to kind of go, okay, every little bit of denial and dissociation around all my bizarre experiences, the programs, and all the things I was trafficked into as a child with extended family. These are real. These are not, that part of me that just was like, this is all a fiction. It's like,
Hmm.
no, it's not. And you got to look at this. So it's like, it's sort of mind blowing. And I was said to somebody recently, like, if I was a smoker and a drinker, I'd be, maybe having some coffee and cigarettes at like 3 in the morning at the kitchen table with like a little light on or no light. And just like,
Right.
ah, anyway, that's kind of graphic, but doesn't it just makes your head spin?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so, after I came to that realization, is right whenever this other guy was coming into my life, and we interviewed him on the show actually, but he came to me as under the guise of a Navy whistleblower. But I
Oh,
found out, I found out the hard way through somebody I know, and I'm just going to leave their name out of it, but who has ties to the Office of Naval Intelligence, and they actually ran his name, and his name doesn't show up in the public database, so that's why a lot of people thought he wasn't making it up, not considering like if he's actually part of a secret program, there's not going to be public information about it, but some people just don't connect those dots because whatever. Um, but they ran his name and it showed up in a private database, and he told me that he was a warrant officer recruitment specialist for the ONI, and his job was to recruit gifted starseeds into the program, and he was actually that whole time in my life from 2021 until end of 22, a little over a year, maybe almost 2 years, honestly. It was a whole grooming effort and an actual recruitment attempt where he literally asked, just straight up asked me if I wanted to join this program. And I actually went through some of the motions to get halfway there. And I became effectively what as a targeted individual at that time, where I was actively being abducted by the military, and I had real time memories of being taken and brought back, and I write about that in the book, and they were like real missions, and I've actually found place. I actually was able to draw the buildings and remember the buildings I went to, and even go visit them in two separate cases.
oh,
One was a Boeing facility in Southern Illinois
yes.
that was 42 minutes from my house, and another one was the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. I had a whole set of memories from there, but I didn't know it was at the Air Force Academy until I just somehow randomly end up there with a friend of mine on this vacation,
Oh,
not even supposed to be going to that base, and driving on the highway. I want to go drive up the Cheyenne Mountain entrance to take a picture of it because of this show Stargate, right? And she's like, "Oh, there's the Air Force Academy. I think you can actually do tours there if you want." And I looked over, and it's amazing I didn't crash the car on the highway. I immediately knew the place.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've been there. Like, I know that place. And I just crossed 4 lanes on the highway and at the last second get off the exit. And she's like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Like, I've been here. I don't know. This place looks familiar." Something
Mhm.
just pulled me over. And when I pulled onto that base, I had a whole mo emotional breakdown. And I broke down in tears and I had all these memories flood back. And in fact, I had to pull the car over because I just couldn't drive anymore. I was shaking. I remembered the place. And I started telling my friend, "I know what goes, I can tell you what's in that building, what's in that building." And I did. And we walked in and like everything I said was true. And there was a whole wild thing that happened while we were at that base. And I still get nervous talking about it, but it was so, okay, something I was gaslighting myself about as it was just a dream.
Mhm.
No, that didn't, it was just a dream. It was just a dream. And then you show up and you know your way around.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's shocking, and I can feel that even now, probably in your system. It's like, wow, the life you were living before 2011 and the life you lived through all of this, what a perspective change. And at the time, is this correct that you and Aaron started Journey to Truth around the same time? So you've got all this anomalous stuff going on, and you're interviewing folks too. Like, what was that like for you to have, keeping things kind of close to your chest for a
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, so we started the podcast in 2019 because that was actually the fun. There was a window there before 2021 when I started connecting when this all really started happening. There was a
Mhm.
window there where when it's the good part of the awakening, when it's kind of exciting and you're learning all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like like you almost have to get a taste of what it can be like before you have to go through the shadow work so you know what it can be like whenever you get through the shadow work. Like it's worth you're kind of shown.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was in that phase when we started the podcast, but then I start having all this stuff happen and we're interviewing people and I was just like, this is happening to me. Like I don't even have to interview them as a skeptic because I'm like, they're not lying. This is real, you know? And it was really interesting. And I didn't talk about it a lot because I wasn't trying to be some like
Yeah.
SSP guy or anything. I was just
Yeah.
curious. But whenever it got to the point where like I have something to share with people, that's when I started talking.
Yes.
And that's really what inspired the book.
Yeah. Was there a particular tipping point in which you knew you had to start to speak publicly on this, Tyler?
Um, no, not a particular point that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that the two main things were going to finding two buildings, two places that I had memories of in real life and finding those.
Yeah.
That's what made it real for me, and that's what changed my life. I would say those could be considered the tipping points, but I think it was just building up slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened? Can I ask, and maybe you go here, maybe you don't, but what happened that day with your friend? You pull off, and this is all like, holy, I've been here, and then some oddities happened whilst you were there. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of the stories I hardly ever get asked about, actually. So I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay.
I put it in the book, but no one ever really asked me a lot about that. So it was I had this memory, what I thought was a dream of. I just suddenly was standing in a circle of cadets, like these recruits, I guess, new recruits in this building, in the lobby of this building, and there was some Air Force personnel there, and it was like there was they were showing us around, showing the new recruits around the base, giving us a tour, trying to, and they specifically, the one guy said, um, no, I don't want you guys to look at this as a recruitment. Look at this as an opportunity to make a difference. That stuck out to me. And who else was there? And this is why I wrote this off as just something completely insane, was the actor Neil McDonough. But I want to let you know, and the audience know, that I didn't know his name at the time. I only recognized him from the show Project Blue Book because I had just like watched that show before. And but he was there and he was that stood out to me. I'm like, what's this actor? Why is he there? And I had to look up his name. I'm like, who is the guy that plays, so and so in Project Blue Book? I'm like, Neil McDonough. Okay, that's weird. And so in that memory, then this whole thing happens, and we he get they get done kind of showing us around, and we walk down the hall and bring me into this office, and they have to watch this like video, this welcome video, and he puts it on, and it starts playing. It's like this whole Air Force, the history of the Air Force, and it's this whole thing to make you excited about joining the military. And then, like about halfway through it, it cuts to these scenes of these children being tortured, and some of the most graphic things I've ever seen. And I was like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "What is that?" And then
Yeah.
he goes, Neil McDonough. So he was the one there. I was in the office, and um, he goes, "Don't worry, son. It's just all part of the job." And I was like, "The hell it is! Like I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
And but he said it with this like evil in his eye, you know. And I was like, "Turn this off!" And I was throwing a fit, and he shut it off. And then eventually, this like aide came in for the cadets, and she basically escorted me to my dorm where I was going to be staying. And she asked me like, "Are you hungry? Do you want to eat first?" Or and then I had thought about it, and I'm like, I'm actually starving. I don't even know the last time I ate." And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, I don't even know how I got here. Like it was such a weird thing. It was like it was happening in real time, like a
Yeah.
parallel reality almost, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And and so I went to the cafeteria, and I remember looking around and like thinking there was an unusual amount of beautiful women there that were there to assist all the men on the recruits, right? And
Mhm.
like each one, like there's these girls and they were all like kind of flirting with these guys, but they were like supermodels in like military uniform. I'm like, something's off. It was really weird. And this girl comes over to my table and she's immediately like sits down without asking, and she's trying to tell me, just flirt with me or whatever. And I was like, in no normal situation does that ever happen. Like, and I realize now, like they're there to keep the men interested in staying, right?
Yeah.
It's they don't want you to ask questions. They want to distract you with these girls, and I'm sure that they just those girls are designated. Like, okay, you go with him and like take him to his room and sleep with him, whatever it is, to get him distracted. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
in fact, I didn't. I actually just walked away from the table. I was like red flags
Wow.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And I went
Yeah.
and found my room because she gave me directions to find my dorm. And I walked into this dorm. It looked like a college dorm. And I could see the window and like literally like it's exactly what the base was. Like I even pointed to the dorm when I was with my friend. I was like, that's the dorm. I was looking out that window.
That's where you were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was looking out the window and I noticed the mountains, and I was like just remembering like first of all I was kind of like paused for a minute and just looking like, oh, these are beautiful mountains. I kind of just didn't, stop thinking about it. And then panic set in, and I started realizing I don't can't remember anything. I don't remember anything before being
Mm.
in that lobby. And then right about the time I'm like literally looking around out the window planning my escape. I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like
Yeah.
somebody knocks on my door, and it's these two guys in suits, and I open the door, and then that's where the memory ends. And then I wake up in my bed after that situation, all discombobulated, and like the full memory is there, and like, oh, that had to have been just a dream, right? Well, whenever we went to that base, and I was telling her, she didn't know any of this about me. I
Oh my
didn't tell her
gosh.
this.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't tell her any of this or this story or anything until like she was like, "What is happening to this guy?" Like I'm pulling over crying, and then I had to explain to her. I'm like, and I hadn't been inside of any of the buildings physically in this reality yet. I'm like in there. I said I was standing in a circle of recruits, and but I told her the whole story, right? We go in there, And I'm like, right here. I literally pointed to the floor. I'm like, this is where we were standing. And I was like, down the hall we went. And then we were walking around the place and we made a lap around the building and we came back and there's literally right where I said we were standing, there was the same exact scenario. Some new recruits with a couple of recruiters. And the guy literally said, now don't think of this as a recruitment, think of this as an opportunity to make a difference. We both heard that. She turned around and her jaw dropped. And I was like, I told you. I said, there's no way I could have known that. There's
Yeah.
no way I could have known that. And she was like, it was like, I don't know, man. It was weird. And then I started kind of freaking out. And I went to use the bathroom, and this guy like followed me into the bathroom, and she got a real weird feeling. And she was just about to come into the bathroom to check on me because she's like, something's off, something's off,
Yeah.
something's off.
Yeah.
And as soon as she was coming into the bathroom, I skipped washing my hands and everything. I got red flags when that guy came in. Whole empty bathroom. I don't even know where this guy came from. He just like the hallway was empty, right? He could have picked any urinal he wanted. He comes right next to me. And then I'm like, this is weird. And then I leave I leave the bathroom. I don't even wash my hands. I'm like, I'm out of here. And as I'm leaving, I'm running into my friend. She's coming into the bathroom to check on me. She was walking into the men's room. That's how serious she thought this was.
Yeah.
And as I'm leaving the bathroom, right before I do, I look over my shoulder and in the mirror, he's just walking over to wash his hands at the time. And he's looking at me in the mirror, just smiling, like he's smiling at me. And it was so weird, like he knew something, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And there was a whole number of other things that happens on that base if you want me to get into it, but I'll pause there if you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, my heart is kind of thumping empathically as I'm listening to all this. And I was just going to say, was it so important in a way that you had her as a witness
Yeah, I think
during this
so.
whole thing? I feel like that maybe helps things land in a way that they might not otherwise. So it's, yeah, it's,
And you want to know the irony of this too? Today, so I'm still unpacking boxes, right? And I just unpacked the box where I saved the brochure for that Air Force Academy. So I can I would sit with it and like meditate with it to try and get more memories back, you know?
yes, I do.
And,
Yeah, the
but
touchstone. Yes.
yeah, but so I saved it and I just opened up a box and I found that flyer today, like an hour ago, right
Today.
before. Yeah,
Today.
today.
Okay, so we needed to go here. What
Yeah.
else? So with that said, okay, what else is kind of alive in you to share about this whole day and this whole experience that came before you went there physically?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, it's important to just I guess share what else happened while I was there physically.
Yes.
So we walked out into this courtyard and I was like, that's the dorm. You know, I'm pointing, I'm like, that's the building I was in, the dorm I was in. I was looking out that window. It's just telling her the story. And I was like, part of me was in panic mode. Like I kept wanting to go. And I was like, we should leave. We should leave. I don't, and she was kind of convincing me. She's like, I think this is actually good for you. Like if it gets bad enough, we'll leave. But she was interested in the chapel. If anybody knows the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, it's this big chapel that looks like a piece of technology. Just on the side of the highway, it's this big pyramid looking, this crazy looking array, right?
Been by there. I just had this blank and I'm like, oh yeah, I used to live in Colorado. I
Yeah.
yes, go on. Go
Yeah.
on.
So, but what was interesting about it is the chapel was completely enclosed and boxed in. They built a gigantic building around this chapel, to give it or to remodel it. And it was like this crazy 8 year long remodel process. It's still not even done, as far as I know. And I was in commercial construction for 15 years. I know the turnaround on a job. That was a cover. That was a cover, you know. And she was a channeler and she's very in tune and she was immediately getting it. That was some sort of a technology that they were using to communicate with extraterrestrials, whatever the case is. They had built it to harness something that was already in the mountain that they had found, and that's specifically why they chose to build the base there.
Yeah.
And as she's like tapping into all that stuff, she's intuitively getting, she's like, they're so naive. They don't even know that they don't need the technology. If they just would talk to the mountain. Like they can organically tap into this energy, right? They don't need this big array. And what she tuned into was that it was working and it stopped working and they couldn't, they were beating themselves over the heads trying to figure out why it stopped working. So they shut the whole thing down and put a build a big box around it. And they're literally trying to figure out or how can we update this thing to make it work again? This is what she was getting intuitively. And it makes perfect sense because we did a dig on that whole thing. Nothing makes sense about any of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And this is just to clarify, this is Cheyenne Mountain. Is that correct?
it's right near Cheyenne Mountain. So
Yeah.
it's the Air Force Academy, but down not far, miles away, and it's
Yeah.
Cheyenne Mountain, and it's all
Yeah.
connected underground.
Yes.
And side note, I had another memory come back from Falcon Air Force Base, and I didn't even know that Falcon Air Force Base was right there in Colorado Springs also, and it's all connected. So there was something majorly going on there. But after we leave we're looking at this chapel and we're just walking around and we just decide, well, let's just go for like check it out and we'll walk over to the gift shop, look in the gift shop, and then we'll leave. And we're walking over to the gift shop and we're walking in and all of a sudden this guy comes barreling past me and like hit bumps into my shoulder so hard, like literally knocks me like I'm like, what the hell? And he never looks back. Typical, like you couldn't be more of a stereotypical Fed if you tried. Like the collar shirt and the sunglasses and the crew cut and the khakis, like it was just like a picture, like postcard Fed boy. And and I just wrote it off at first as if he passed us up and then went down the hall, never looked back. And I thought, oh, he must just have to go to the bathroom or something bad, you know? So we walk around the gift shop for about 20 minutes or so. Like we spent some time in there because it was really hot outside and it was felt really cold, nice and cool in the gift shop. So we were just like cooling off too because there's a long walk over there. And we were like both like, okay, I think we're done. And right as we're walking out of the gift shop, the same guy comes back and does the same exact thing and bumps my shoulder on the way out as I'm walking literally to the point where I'm like what the hell? And as he passes me, he literally like looks at his watch and like presses a button and then goes beeline straight to a car, gets in and just takes off. It's like he was there as we got there and as we left. And I don't know what or who he was or how it was connected, but it was connected somehow. And the fact that he like clocked it after he hit me the second time, like there was just
Yeah.
something off. And even she was like, that was not normal. Like that doesn't just happen. And and then I've had sessions. I've heard that like you can actually there's like the body snatchers where you can actually be taken and if somebody bumps into you, it like
Yeah.
creates this disturbance and they can take you and put you back. I don't know. Nevertheless, it was curious, right? Very curious. And then we made it back to the car and then we drove over to Cheyenne Mountain, tried to get into the base, and the guy, they wouldn't let us through.
Wouldn't
And
let you through, right? Yeah.
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 But I also will say, pulling up to the academy, to the Air Force Academy, rewinding, the gate to get in, the security gate, the entrance. There's like four car bays and each one's a different color. And I was explaining to my friend, I'm like, yeah, those colors, that's how you know this is an underground base because each color indicates a security clearance stripe on the floor in the base. And each stripe leads to a different part of the base.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she's like, how do you know that? And I was like, oh, I just assume, but I've seen it like in Stargate and stuff. And he's just like, yeah, but how do you know that that's what that means for this base? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just, connecting dots. But we get up, all the cars are just going through, going through, going through. There's a line of cars too. Surprisingly, like a number of people visit this base. It gets to us, go figure. They want to search our car. And they do. And we have to pull out our IDs and then we open the trunk and blah, blah, blah. And then they finally let us go. And we thought that was odd that we were literally the only car in the whole line that they decided to search. So there's some anomalies there that are worth noting. But it's easier to talk about now than it was after it happened because it was so emotional having that realization that I had been there before and all
Yeah.
those weird things happening while we were there. It was surreal.
Oh yeah, because as you're speaking, I'm kind of going like, did you just have to go home and collapse, lock the door for a few days, and just like have a little meltdown to process that? I would think.
I actually did, and in fact, my friend got upset with me because I was I became very distant. I actually kind of went into a hole and became a hermit after that trip. It was almost like a system overload,
Yes.
and I didn't know how to deal with it, so I just kind of shut people out of my life at the time and just kind of went inward.
Yeah.
And it was probably not the healthiest way to deal with it, but I didn't really know. I don't
Yeah.
think I understood the magnitude of what was happening. And, even though I know it was wild, but it was something I still have to remind myself that that happened, that really
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, it did. Wow. And what was it? Can you say, like, do you have a sense of you were taken at night to this base and then the time span between you actually showed up in person with your friend? Like, what was
A year later,
so a
probably.
year later had
Yeah, maybe,
transpired?
maybe even less than a year later. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
And
just for clarifying
and the
that.
fact that I would never even wanted to go to Colorado. I didn't actually want to go on to that trip. It was this whole weird situation how we ended up there anyway. And that was never part of the itinerary and nothing. It was all just kind of like it just happened. And here
Yeah.
I am on this Air Force base, on the tail end of this trip where we're literally on the way to the airport. And this was like on the way to the airport, we stopped and all this happened, right?
Well, I mean, what synchronicity? Nothing about that was, as we all know now, this is not random. In
Right.
the intervening year, was that also when the Boeing experience happened for you? Or
Yeah. So the Boeing experience happened. That happened prior to that.
that was
Yeah.
before all of that. And
Yeah.
can you,
But it was just before that.
okay, so that was starting to happen in a little bit of succession there. Were
That
you at
was
this? Oh,
what
I was just, go ahead. Go ahead first
I was
there.
gonna say. That was during the time when this other guy, this Navy guy, was trying to recruit me into this program,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So it
Yeah.
was during that grooming process. I think even by entertaining what I was entertaining, I was somehow consenting to all this stuff, and they were just taking me.
Yeah. I was gonna say there, just were you at all getting frightened of going to sleep? Or, what's gonna happen if how were you with just the scope of day-to-day life at that point? And
I had been so numb to the attacks,
okay. Yeah.
which I mean, some of them were horrible, and I could write books about just that and
Yeah.
the different things I encountered and overcame, and the beings and entities that showed up, and the reptilians and the grays and the men in black, and all the stuff that just show up in your room, and monsters that only exist in sci-fi movies, and actually hearing them and seeing them in some cases, and
Yeah.
demonic presence. It was all of it, all the above and some,
Yeah.
and I was so numb to it, even though when it would still happen, like I just, it was hardly phasing me anymore. So when I would wake up from something like that, it just was almost like it was just par for the course. I'm like, yeah, okay,
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
like my life now. But
Yeah.
I'm way out of that now. Like that's not happening anymore. And it's amazing. And I had to like learn, there were some lessons there that I wasn't learning that I needed to learn and things that I had to happen in my life for me to come out of it. But
Yeah.
I'm happy to say like yeah, there's still like little attempts here and there and things happen, but I'm so on to them and like above all that and not feeding it like I was, and I've pulled
Yes.
myself.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've cut some people out of my life, which actually made a big difference. Like who you surround yourself with actually matters too. It took an entire change of life, and even leaving St. Louis. Once I left St. Louis, it was the best thing. It was almost like they had set up camp at my house, and they were just
Yeah.
picking me whenever they wanted.
Wow. Yeah. So at what point in all this, we're talking many previously, you kind of went through a lot of targeting. At what point did you actually connect the dots? Like, this is actually me as a target.
During that time, during
Okay.
that specific time, because it wasn't just those two bases that I remember being taken to. I was experiencing targeted individual stuff in my day-to-day life.
Yes.
Somebody
Yeah.
was breaking into my car, not breaking in, they were just like accessing my car somehow.
Mm.
going through everything, glove box, but not taking anything, and leaving the doors open even. And and that happened a few occasions. And sometimes they would like move my seat back and recline my seat and like just weird things for no reason, like to mess with you, right? It was which is what they do, I learned. And
Yeah.
like my dog's collar went missing twice, and then one time, like the second time it went missing, and I found it in a bedroom that was closed and locked all night. So like it couldn't have gotten
Oh,
off of her. So somebody like somehow took that collar off her in the middle of the night, put it in the middle of a bed in a bedroom that had been closed all night. And like she couldn't have even got it off herself and done that. It was just impossible. So it was like they wanted me to know.
yeah.
And then I was getting hit with like direct energy weapons on some occasions. They kept like targeting me, and I had the worst hives I've ever had in my life. Like never
Oh,
in my life had I had hives before, and I kept getting hives. And in some cases, I felt like something was actually being beamed at me,
yeah.
and weird vans following me when I'm at the park or walking and stuff. And then um, a whole I saw a TR-3B right over my house one night, March 2nd of
Oh my
2022.
God.
March,
Wow.
yeah, that was a wild day. I went to the barracks where I used to, well, grew up, and I would walk there. And everyone's like, "Why do you always go back there to walk? Like, there's a million parks." But I grew up there. That was my stomping grounds. We played there. It felt like home. So I would go in this figure eight trail, and uh, there was a weird encounter at the trail. This girl was, I ran into this little girl on the trail that day. This was during all this targeting, right? And I run into her on the trail. In fact, I actually went and explored this portal. There's an old Native American or not burial cell, a Native American prison cell that I found out through like park rangers and stuff. That's what it used to be. That's not advertised as that. It's kind of like looks like a hobbit home built into the hillside. And I had always went there in the past because I felt this energy surrounding it. And I would like go on top of it, but the gate was always locked. You couldn't go inside. There's a padlock on the gate. And for some reason, I just wanted to go and go check it out, go over there again because it had this potent, palpable energy. Like you could almost feel your hands going like it was a
Wow.
vortex.
Yeah.
And I get there that day, and the gate was open, the padlock was open, and it was like wide open, almost like an invite. And I went to go walk into it. I'm like, I'm going in here. It's like super eerie, prison cell,
My
dark,
goodness. Yes.
cold bunker. And as I walk in there, I see this wall of energy, right? Look like a ripple, like a portal almost. And as I'm walking in there, literally like a figure walks out of that wall, that ripple, and like walks past me, like a person walks past me, and then they just like disappear in the thin air, as if they were just like this was an active portal, and I just happened to witness it. And then I spent some time there, and I go back to the trail. I left. My spidey sensors were like, get out of there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I go back to the trail, and I'm walking, and this fed guy with the earpiece. He walks past me. I'm like, interesting. Could be somebody, maybe not. And then I get to the other side of the trail, and it's like just spring, so nothing's grown in yet. And way down on the trail, there's like this like workout equipment, and it's like this ladder thing. You just climb up one side, down the other. And there's a little girl like perched on top of it. And there's nobody around, no adults, no parents. Like she couldn't have been more than 9 years old, 8 or 9. And maybe around that age. And I'm watching her. I'm like, surely her parents are like around the corner. Like, this is weird. I'm like, just staring at her. I'm walking down the trail. I'm getting closer and closer to her. And this was during COVID. So she was wearing a COVID mask. Um, I was like, this is weird where her parents, and I was gonna go up and ask her where her parents were. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And I get up, and then she's staring at me, but like hardcore staring at me. And it was like freaking me out almost. And as I'm getting close to her, I was just about to say something. And through her mask, I didn't know what she was saying at first. I finally figured it out, but she started like a machine. She started going, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden. I'm like, what? I thought she was speaking German. It sounded like she had a German accent. In fact, I think she did, or at least Bosnian or something. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't hear you with your mask on, like, because we read lips and stuff. And she said, And she goes, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden. I said, Missouri Botanical Garden. And she goes, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden. And I was like, it like did something to me. Like I was like, what just happened? I don't even know what happened. And then she just was staring at me and I kept walking. And I just like walked off from there, almost like in a trance. And then it dawned on me after I walked past her. I'm like, I never even asked that girl like where her parents were. I'm like, what just happened? That was so weird. It was so odd. I don't even know how to describe that. So then I never did go back, and I probably should have, but that's not like me, which I find like something weird. I almost think, well, I know what happened after the fact. I get to my car, and my car had been gone through. My seat was all moved and all that stuff. And okay, so I know they're messing with me. And then it was that evening, I go home and I sat down to watch a movie. And I was like, you know what? It's a nice night. It's a clear sky. I'm gonna go sky watch tonight. I walk out my back door and just lay down on the deck and just to look up because it's easier to lay down. It's nice. I was out there for 30 seconds and I'm looking and it looked like a scene from a movie. Here comes this black triangle TR-3B,
Yeah.
like literally flying directly over my house. And then I'm like, I stand up. I'm like, this can't be real because we're used to seeing like lights in the sky and stuff, but when you see a real craft, it's just like it's really no different than seeing an airplane. It was just that real. And I'm watching this thing completely silent. It has the three lights on it like we see, and it banks right over my house and it just makes like this 90-degree turn. And I'm just like watching it in awe as it just takes off. And I'm just like, this is no coincidence anymore. Like they're just straight up targeting me or whatever's happening. I told this guy who was trying to recruit me, I told him what happened. And I when I said that phrase to him, Wendy's Missouri Botanical Garden, he was like, wait, what did you say?
Hmm.
And I told him again, he goes, okay, hang on. I'm gonna run that up the ladder, which is what he likes, whatever that means, right? And he got back to me and he goes, that's a pre-code. And I was like, what do you mean a pre-code? Like an activation code, a remember code? He goes, but it wasn't from us. Like he's like, somebody else was trying to activate you and or see how you reacted or gauge your reaction to that code.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, really? Like, what is this? What is happening? Like, it was just the wildest thing ever. I couldn't believe it was my life. Like, I'm like that. I couldn't make sense of that situation. And I had to believe him, because I'm just like, how else would that make any sense?
Yeah.
So that's the type of stuff I was dealing with.
Yeah. And so many, Tyler, so many dots to connect to so many high strange moments there. And even just in what you relayed, and this was back at the base where you grew up, is that correct?
Yeah.
The girl in the
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
okay. Wow. So did you want to share a little could you share a little bit about the Boeing experience or um is that
Yeah, I can. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because that one's exhausting to tell.
okay. Well, we can
But
say that for you
well,
just give us a little
I'll
soundbite. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll give the bullet points. So
Okay.
I basically these memories just start somewhere. There's not like an origin point. Next thing I like basically essentially wake up in the back of this SUV in the middle of the night, and there's a guy next to me and two guys in the front seat, and then there's another SUV in front of us, and we're in Illinois. I don't know how I knew we were in Southern Illinois. I'm from the area and I knew we were in Illinois. It just looked familiar to me. I wasn't certain, but that was my best guess. And by the time I was like wondering what was going on, we were already pulling into this parking lot, right? And these guys asked me to get out of the vehicle, and the car in front of me was the guy that I knew in my real life who had was trying to recruit me into this program, this Navy guy, and he's literally there. And this is the second time I had encountered him in a memory, and so there's some connection there. And anyway, they escort me into the basement of this facility. I didn't know it was a Boeing facility at the time, but
Mm.
it was all very vivid, and so I woke up and like drew the buildings because it was so real. But they brought me into this basement of this facility, basically, um, almost it was like a training module type of thing where they were basically brought me into this room to test my abilities. and gauge how I would react to this like black goo spider thing that they had in this canister.
Yeah.
And and it was basically I had got the sense that they had brought many people down here and ran the same test.
Mhm.
How is this person going to react when this thing comes out? What are they going to do? Are they, and then I guess it's a whole long story after that, but that's what happened. And at the end of that whole thing, I woke up in my bed sideways. I had overslept. I had missed phone calls. My roommate, I was supposed to meet him at work, and he was like calling me, like, what the heck? Where are you? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like overslept by hours. And I wake up sideways in my bed, no covers, all the whole 9 yards. Um, but I didn't wake up. I woke up with like the full memory, like from start to finish, waking
Yeah.
up in the back of the it didn't like just come back over time. I'm like, what just happened? That was real. That was real. Like, was that a dream? No, it wasn't a dream. Like that was real. And it was so important to me. I drew the buildings, and it was through a synchronicity of somebody that I met at our conference, that I found out that it was even a Boeing facility because he was a delivery driver, and it was just a whole interesting connection, right? But um, it was again, it was real. Like it felt real, but it was happening overnight. So you tell yourself, like, was that a dream? Was it real? But it was real because I ended up finding the place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and those are the synchronicities that we all kind of wait and watch for when we're not sure, like, and to have that given to you is a bit of a grail, there that is. So that's helpful to all of us to hear about how these things can unfold and provide like evidence after the fact, so to say.
Hmm.
And you had the bandwidth and to sit up and write all this down, and it's incredible that you remembered it. You remembered it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when these things happen, like it's not like a dream because when I sit with it more becomes clear. Dreams fade. Like dreams fade. Things
Yeah.
morph. Things don't make sense. I'm like, no, this was like, I was like, was it a dream? And I'm sitting there writing and drawing the pictures. I'm like, no, this is a real setting. Like these people, nothing's changing. Everything is constant, right? It's not like, I'm talking to you, then all of a sudden you're Dr. Sala, or you know what I mean? Like how
Yeah,
it
so
happens
they're
in the,
all random and don't make sense, and they're not very
right.
linear. Like, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it was just one of those things. I don't know. It's hard to even tell people about because I don't know what they'll actually think if I'm losing my mind. And I'm wondering too, am I losing my mind? Like what is happening here? And there were so many things
that
going
was going
on.
to be as I've been going through some of these things that make me feel like I'm a little worried about my mental health at times. I wondered, in the back of my own awareness, like, has he ever felt like he was going crazy? Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. It was tough.
Do you think that's part of the design? That we will just doubt ourselves so much, and it'll be so much cognitive dissonance that we maybe like kind of write it off, write it off, write it off.
Yeah,
Is that part of the plan?
I absolutely, absolutely. I think so. They rely on us to be gaslit into believing it was something else.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. I think that's helpful to everyone listening. So, we
Yeah.
use our discernment and we come back into our own what we said at the beginning, which I drew from your introduction. Feel how that lands inside of you.
Mm.
What's the sensation through the body? Is this the truth for you? And don't be afraid to face that. Now, at the soul level, how do you metabolize all of this that you've shared today and all the things that you've written about in your book? Do you feel like there's a deeper soul plan in having come in to experience these things, or what's your take on all that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, when I learned about the secret space program, it changed me fundamentally. It resonated so deeply, it changed my life. And something like that shouldn't, because a lot of people hear about the secret space program. Most people laugh it off. They don't
Yeah.
take it serious. It was like looking back on it, I felt like I was remembering that it was real. Not, I didn't learn about it. I was like, wait, this is real. This is what's happening out there.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
involved.
Hmm.
And I had this feeling I was involved. Um, it was, how do I deal with it? I don't even know how to answer that question. Writing the book was the most healing thing I could ever done.
Um,
Putting it down, it was hard to write. And in fact, when I was writing the specific chapter about the targeting, I got a really, really bad random note while I was writing that chapter, and it wouldn't stop bleeding, and I was like, it was like unbelievable. I'm like, this, I couldn't stop it. I was actually like, do I have to go to the urgent
Right,
care for a nosebleed? Like,
right.
and I finally got to stop, but it sidetracked me, and I didn't go back to the book for months after that for some reason.
Oh
Like
gosh.
they
Yeah.
almost like distracted me from writing about it. But getting it all down for one was healing because I relived it all, and it was hard to write, and there was tears during some of it while I was writing, but it was very healing, and it cleared space for more stuff to come through, and
Yeah.
it was clearing space for better things to come through, in fact. And I don't know, what was your exact question? Did I
Well, it
answer
was
it?
about how you've metabolized this at like the big picture soul level. Like, is there a higher wisdom inside of you going through this at that
Oh,
level?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think absolutely like I chose this on some level to be a part of this to help bring it to light. And I know people have, that's one of the things people have the hardest time with. Why would anyone ever choose this? And I think we've even discussed this
We've
very
talked
thing.
about this
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Why would you choose that?
I genuinely think that I none of it, I played a part in it in some level. Like I was consenting, agreeing, my higher self. Like, in fact, like if we understand time, like it's all already happened anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really hard to explain in that regard, but it also explains why I was targeted in 2017 before we started the podcast and before I became who I am now as it's my life's mission, passion, and job to disclose this stuff. In some way, in some capacity, I think some group had technology or knew what I was about to step into, and they were trying to pull me off of that path, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, everything's already known. I mean, it's like they have timeline technology, looking glass technology,
Yes.
and and in some capacity, if I am involved in it, like even a higher program or a deeper program that I don't have memories of, which I think I am, and I've gotten glimpses of it,
Mhm.
I think that I'm very much aware of what's happening, and we're living multiple lives simultaneously. And that's kind of what my book is about. And because I have memories that we haven't gotten into, part two of my book, Tales from Another Timeline, are memories like the ones I've shared, but they can't all be from this life because some of them aren't. It's like something that's happening simultaneously to this life in a parallel reality where things are almost exactly the same, but they're just slightly different. And for some reason, I'm blessed with, or it's just part of my design or plan to retrieve those memories and connect the dots that we're living in like multiple lives. Like quantum mechanics is real, like the many worlds theory. It's all happening simultaneously, and there's multiple versions of us. And it's not just me in this life being abducted into this program and brought back. In fact, there are many versions of me involved in many different types of programs. It's all a similar theme because that's my archetype, my path, whatever it is. And I guess I could say I'm blessed or grateful. I don't know what the word is, but I'm lucky to even be able to remember what I'm remembering, to write it down and make sense
Yes.
of it and understand that, okay, yes, this happened on Earth, but the details are different. They don't match exactly the same as I'm seeing here in this reality. And things are happening in this memory that don't actually make sense to the life that we're living as a collective here.
Yeah.
It's like things are slightly different. Maybe we're a little more technologically advanced in this memory, or something is going on that's just slightly different, but it's still Earth and it's still me, but it's just another version of me. And that's like, and I
Mhm.
think that timelines come to an end and collapse. And when they do, that those memories bleed through into this reality because that energy has to rehome and go somewhere. And I think that we're at a point in humanity right now where a lot of those false inorganic timelines are collapsing, where we're participating in these dark programs. And when they collapse, like I said, that rehomes. And then I'm just fortunate to be able to remember it and write about it before the memory goes away,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You've elucidated that very well. I appreciate that because it's like we can have people in the audience here for both of us have lots of anomalous experiences and encounters that cannot be necessarily explained. And so this is like, yeah, they're not all from this lifetime. They don't all lay down in linear. They're not all going to be tidy as they come in, but they still have wisdom and seeds of intelligence inside of them and bring us back to who we've always been.
Right,
We need those, even if it doesn't fit into our cosmology or what we understand or think we understand about our own lives and our identity. There's something that you said. I've heard you say we don't learn stuff. Our souls remember it.
right.
And I think that's also so beautifully said. Like there's so much that is activating within us and our listeners as they listen to you and as you tell your story, you write it, you host the podcast with Aaron. It's all about us remembering.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
powerful. Yeah, so there's a big mission written inside of everything that you described in the book and the journey that you're making with all that you're bringing to the world now. And without direct experience, maybe it wouldn't be as salient. There's a real fidelity to disclosure in you going through all this and becoming who you are in the world, and people look up to you. So, um,
yeah.
thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. And one interesting side note, I'm only going to add this because I think you'll find it particularly interesting, is most of my memories that have come back didn't happen while I was in St. Louis. I was on a trip out of St. Louis, and one of the big ones came back while I was visiting Arkansas, which is the Ozark region. But then we have a condo in the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri, and every time I would go to the condo and sleep there, it was right on the lake. It's like I would get the best, deepest sleep ever, and I would always have a profound memory recall that was that was that became chapters of my book, and they all happened there. And in fact, there's another big recall that has happened since I've written a book that will definitely be in the second book, involving another program type of experience, but um, that's even more wild. But it all happens specifically in that location for some reason, and there has to be a reason for that. Either whether there's not as many towers, there's not as much frequency blocking that. I'm able to tap into something deeper or get into a deeper state of sleep, whatever it is. I think that at your physical location actually plays a big role in your memories.
Thank you for saying that. I totally agree with that. And the frequency, the resonance, everything is about that. And you've also to kind of counterpoint to all the let's say the targeting and the darker experiences we're talking about. You've had very benevolent encounters as well. So,
Yes.
is that maybe we could start to wrap up here? Is that is that something ongoing for you? These benevolent relationships with beings from other worlds. Is that ongoing?
Yes, actually, I'll just jump to the most current thing because I've had inner Earth beings, I've had benevolent
Yeah,
ET
yeah.
contact, I've
Hmm.
had a number of beautiful experiences, especially inner Earth. Actually, that's been a theme, even as recently as this summer in Mount Shasta. I had this beautiful experience of being brought down into like this healing chamber in Telos,
Hmm.
and it was so real. I went up onto the mountain to meditate by myself. Every time I go up on the mountain, it's always with people. And I told my girlfriend, I was like, listen, I know you want to go up on the mountain with me, but I need to go by myself. Like I'm supposed to. I've been wanting to for years. I never get a chance to go in solitude and just meditate on this mountain. Like I want to do that.
Yeah.
And everyone's be careful, because there are stories.
Hmm.
And I go and find this place, and I keep being led to a place until like it's like this little cave entrance, but the cave doesn't really go anywhere. And I sit in front of it, and I go into meditation, and nothing's happening, and nothing's happening. I'm like, man, like I really and then I just heard, stop, stop wanting something to happen and just do it, make it happen. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna go Telos, and I'm gonna bilocate to Telos, and I was in a lot of body pain at the time. I was like, I'm gonna go into one of the healing chambers and heal. And next thing you know, I just like in my head, I create this scenario. Like I'm just like bilocating down there, and then I'm talking to this tall woman in the earth. And then next thing you know, I'm having a conversation with her, and she's like, um, hello, welcome to Telos. Would you like a tour or would you like to go to the healing chamber right away? I was like, no.
Mm.
I would love a tour, but I'm here. I need help. Like I'm actually in pain. And she brings me into this fountain. This is healing. This like this fountain, not a chamber. It's a beautiful fountain with this emerald green water. It's not even water. It's like this liquid, right? It's like I don't even know how to describe the texture of it. It's like not familiar to what we have on the surface. And I get into it, I take my clothes off and I get into this fountain, and the temperature immediately adjusts to your body, so it's the most optimal, comfortable temperature. And and she's like explaining to me the process as I get in. She's like, "Yeah, your skin is absorbing it down to a cellular level, and it's like flushing out all the toxins and blah blah blah, and like this whole experience." And I eventually come out of that and I just come out of this meditation and I forgot that I was meditating. Like I'm on my legs asleep. And like, I forgot that I was on the mountain meditating. I come back to our Airbnb and like, I told a story and it was amazing. And then later that day, I go to use the bathroom and I go pee and my pee is emerald green, like Mountain Dew. Like, and I'm just drinking water. Like there's nothing I drank that could have
Wow.
been. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh my God. I'm like, was that real? Like, did I actually bilocate and create that experience? So there's been a lot of inner earth themes. And then lately, as of very late, Sasquatch has been showing up a lot in my visions. And I've been going out and having, not necessarily seeing them, but I almost feel like I'm on the verge of some sort of a contact or experience with Sasquatch because
Yes.
it's just showing up everywhere. And I've had interactions and things being left, and just a number of synchronicities. We could do a whole episode on Sasquatch alone and what's been happening recently. And that's been nothing but positive. And I'm actually really excited. I've been going out to this one particular trail where I know that they're at, so that's just to end this on a higher note. There's some good things
Yeah.
happening now, and it's not all this military stuff. Even though Sedona is like it's a double-edged sword because there's a lot of that happening here as well. But if you can navigate through that and get on the other side, it's actually a beautiful place to have beautiful experiences.
Oh gosh, I just lit up. Thank you so much for sharing that about, well, the Shasta and then the Sasquatch. Just this summer I'd never had an encounter with Sasquatch, and it's up here in interior Alaska, and my acreage out here is like every time I go out, they're everywhere, and there's always a Sasquatch on my left side. But just to corroborate, like I don't know if they're coming into more people now because our situation is in some ways rather in some ways kind of urgent right now, or I don't know, just thanks for yeah, and my heart
Yeah,
is full with you mentioning the Sasquatch, and thanks for sharing and that the benevolence of your encounters as well. So you've
yeah,
got
and
both sides to that.
there's more benevolence too. I mean, there's more good
So
stuff to
much.
share. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just I feel like it's important to understand that all the stuff that we talked about already too, for anybody that's listening, trying to make sense of it, because there's people that are just now figuring this stuff out, and we don't want to forget about them. So,
Yeah.
I'm happy to have these conversations.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing a lot of things home for a lot of people as they're listening. Tyler, any last wisdom there?
Yes, don't forget to have fun. Like the biggest mistake I've made on my spiritual journey is taking it too seriously. And I've gotten out of balance by doing that. Got to meditate. You got to eat this right. You got to do that. You can't walk this certain way. You can't wear this brand anymore. Fuck
Oh,
that. I'm sorry, fuck that. Like like that doesn't work. That's actually that that's what I think people call the new age BS, right? It becomes a new religion where you feel guilty for doing normal things in life.
yeah.
And I realize you just have to have fun and don't forget to have fun because it's that joy frequency where we grow and evolve. And that's the biggest message I end any interview with nowadays because for quite some time I was forgetting to have fun and it started impacting me. And I thought I was um, doing all the right things, and when in fact I was just only hurting myself.
Tyler, thank you for just your vulnerability, your boldness, your courage, and all of that, and bringing the book forth. We'll connect all your links below here. I'd love for you guys to come and see us live in person in Sedona. It's the 16th, 17th, 18th of January. And if you'd like to, yeah, book a transformative one-on-one sessions with me, all those links are below for readings, healing sessions, inner child integration, galactic attunements, and so much more.
Yeah.
Tyler, such a pleasure. And I will see you. I will see you in just a few weeks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And if people are interested in the book, it's available on Amazon. And if you enjoy it, I would really appreciate leaving a review on Amazon. That's just the one thing I'll ask people to do because it actually does help your book and the ratings and stuff. So, uh, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't want to read it, I don't blame you either. I don't have an audio book, but it's like a 400-page book. So, and I had to cut a lot out because I was like, this is just going to be too long. There's got to be a part two. But this was amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm looking forward to connecting here in person, and it'll be a blast. And if anyone is interested, you can go to Eventbrite slash Odyssey or whatever the link is and get tickets there. And I won't be speaking there. I'll just be hosting a panel. I don't think John, the guy is putting it on, I don't think he doesn't know me as anything else other than a podcast host. I don't even think he knows I have a story to tell. So
Okay. Okay.
uh,
Well,
I probably would be speaking there. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'll be doing sessions there, and then we'll be watching your the premiere of your
film. Yeah.
the disclosure film. So we'll see you soon, Tyler. Thank you so much.
All right. Good night.
Just to mention this briefly, I have a mother and father from a previous lifetime, Indigenous mother and father, and I just call them simply mother and father. They've been with me every day for about 2.5 years. They were my parents from a previous lifetime with the Crow people, and they've helped me heal so much. They've done soul retrieval work for me. They helped me journey to get parts back. And that's actually ongoing. Like even today, I was working with them this morning. And their love is so beautifully unconditional.